Does control actually create the life you want, or does it get in the way of it?
Two years ago, if you had asked me what I needed to survive here, I would have handed you a list. Residency paperwork, a language app I opened every morning like it was medicine, a 5-year plan I wrote before I even knew what a hospoda was. For years I was working and I kept researching Toulouse. And then the movie Under the Tuscan Sun came along. And then, like half the women in America, I was convinced that Tuscany was waiting for me, with a crumbling villa and excellent lighting. Everything here has a name. It has a row. It has a reason that it's planted exactly where it's planted. For a long time, I thought that was the whole job. Figuring out where I was supposed to go and where I was supposed to stay.
There were only 2 minor complications. She did not live in France, she did not live in Italy, and she had absolutely no intention of restoring plumbing.
It's beautiful here. It really is. But it's a lot of managing. But I kept looking. Different houses, different cities. And eventually I had to ask myself a question. I did everything right, so why was I trying to escape my life?
She used to think a life needed a label to be worth something. 2 years is long enough to build a life. It is also long enough to notice which parts of it you never actually planted.
For most of my adult life, I knew how to do what came next. You work, you move up, you make reasonable, responsible decisions. You keep the machinery running. You solve the problem in front of you, and then someone rewards you by handing you a more expensive problem. And I was good at it. That's the important part. I wasn't standing outside my own life, unable to function. I had built a life. I managed it, and I kept it going. From the outside, there was no obvious reason to want out, but somewhere in the background, Toulouse was always open in another browser tab.
Some people distracted themselves at work by checking social media. She investigated municipal transportation in southern France.
I researched neighborhoods, I looked at housing. I imagined what an ordinary Tuesday might feel like there. Not a vacation, a life. Then Tuscany arrived, not geographically, cinematically. And suddenly the fantasy had warm stone walls, long tables, sunflowers, and beautiful strangers who apparently had no job and unlimited free time. Toulouse was the life I researched. Tuscany was the life that Hollywood sold me. Neither one was really about France or Italy. There was evidence that some part of me had been asking for another life long before I admitted it out loud. My sister once asked me, "Why do we keep moving? We must have nomadic blood." At one time, that sounded romantic, nomadic blood. And it turned out she may not have been speaking metaphorically. There really were nomadic genetic connections in our ancestry. But her question stayed with me. Why did we keep moving? Were we adventurous? Were we restless? Were we moving towards something? Or were we always moving away? Sometimes I think escape gets treated like a dirty word, as if leaving automatically means that you failed to fix what you had. But sometimes wanting to escape is just information, and it doesn't always mean that the life is terrible. Sometimes it just means that life has become too small for the person that's living inside of it. I had done everything that I was supposed to do. But doing everything right made me very skilled at maintaining a life that I wasn't sure that I really wanted. And that's a frightening thing to admit, because when your life is obviously broken, then people understand why you would want to leave. When your life looks successful, to people it can look ungrateful or irrational, maybe even irresponsible. So instead of announcing that I wanted another life, I just researched one quietly for years. And then after a while, I stopped. I no longer wanted to move abroad. The idea that had followed me for years simply became less important. I was content. I was happy. Or so I thought. Then I met my partner, and we had no intention of moving abroad. We weren't secretly planning on escape. We weren't comparing countries or counting the years until we could leave. We were building a life exactly where we were.
The international relocation plan was proceeding perfectly, primarily because there wasn't one.
And yet, here we are. That may be the strangest part of this story. I spent years imagining that I would leave, and I stayed. Then I finally stopped imagining it, and eventually I left. Not for Toulouse, not for Tuscany, for a life neither of us had been planning. A botanical garden's beautiful because almost everything has been decided. What belongs here, what gets moved, what gets cut back, what's allowed to spread, and what's not. There are paths, labels, borders, a plan.
In other words, her natural habitat.
I understand this garden. I like a plan. I like knowing where things go. I like the reassuring fiction that if I organize everything correctly, nothing unexpected's going to happen. Nature has never agreed to these terms, and neither has life. For years, I imagined that changing my life meant choosing the correct destination. Toulouse or Tuscany, the right country, the right house, the right light coming through the right kitchen window. I thought the answer would be another beautifully managed arrangement, but I didn't end up in either of those places. I ended up in Brno.
Tuscany has declined to comment.
Brno wasn't the fantasy pinned to the wall. It wasn't the film. It was not the place I had spent years researching. It was the life that became possible when I finally stopped insisting that the future had to arrive exactly as I had pictured it.
This place has stood here for 700 years without anyone managing it. Nobody waters it, nobody trims it back. It simply continued.
Out here, things look less supervised. The trees lean where they lean, roots interrupt the path, plants compete for light, things fall, decay, and feed whatever comes next. No one appears to be panicking. This is very unlike an American workplace. And yet it grows. Not neatly, not according to my timeline, not always in the direction I would have chosen, but it grows. And that may be what I was looking for all those years. Not one perfect European city, but permission to stop managing every part of myself, to find out what might grow if I left some space unmanaged. Of course, some things need managing. Bills need paying, dogs need feeding, international moves require approximately 7,000 documents, and at least one of them will be the wrong document. But there is a difference between taking care of your life and trying to control exactly how it's allowed to unfold. And sometimes, when you truly stop caring about forcing the outcome, it's almost as if the universe steps in and says, "Remember this? Remember that other life you kept imagining? I'm going to give it to you, but I'm going to give it to you in a different way." Not the city I researched, not the country Hollywood romanticized, not according to my plan or on my timetable. This time, the universe was going to send me where I needed to be and with who I needed to be with. Moving to the Czech Republic didn't cure me of my restlessness. I don't know whether people with nomadic blood ever become completely still. And I don't want to turn moving into a magical solution. You bring yourself with you. Your habits clear customs. Your fears find the connecting flight. But movement can interrupt the story that you've been telling about who you are supposed to be. It can show you which parts were really you and which parts you had simply become excellent at performing. So was I always trying to escape my life? Yes, I think I was, but maybe I had misunderstood what that meant. I wasn't necessarily escaping because everything behind me was bad. I was escaping the idea that because I had built a life successfully, that I was required to remain inside it forever. There's a peculiar trap in doing everything right. Eventually, the life you built becomes evidence against changing it. You've invested too much, you've worked too hard, you've explained it to too many people, you've collected too many things that fit the person that you used to be. And then one day, wanting something else feels like a betrayal of everything that came before. But changing doesn't erase the life you built. It means that life carried you as far as it could.
And in her case, it carried her to Central Europe, where she remains unable to locate her tram stop.
For years, Toulouse gave me somewhere to imagine. Tuscany gave the fantasy, excellent lighting. But Brno gave me something neither of them could. It gave me the life I could not plan from a desk in America. Not a perfect life, not a finished life, and definitely not an orderly one, but one that was still growing. Maybe I kept moving because I was always trying to find home. Maybe I kept moving because I was always trying to find out who I was. Or maybe moving was how I kept giving myself permission to become someone new. I still don't know whether I was running away or moving towards something. Maybe sometimes they are the same road. I spent years imagining that I would leave, and I stayed. I ended up in Brno.
2 years in, and the parts of her life she's proudest of are the ones she never once put on a list. She did everything right. Then, finally, she did something else.